My partner and I got into Bitcoin in 2013, and we've always perceived Bitcoin as like, this, I guess, digital commodity, if you will. The tech of it was really interesting. There was just like this tech buzz around it. And then Ethereum happened, and we were kind of like, wait, there's like degeneracy in art and culture and all these things like happened on Ethereum, and Bitcoin frankly got boring. Right? Like it did, at least for us. But then Ethereum was just kind of crazy. Like all these things started happening and popping off. And I knew that Ordinals happened as someone who actually was like, what are the Taproot Wizards? Because that happened to me, right? And how I found out about them, I was in a Spaces, and I just popped in because I've known Eddie for a while in the space. And I'm like, who are these nerds? But like the cool nerds, that's totally my vibe. To me, the Wizards are culture on Bitcoin. Also tech, which is incredible. But my introduction to it was through this like nerdy culture vibe. So yes, there's, collections and art and that side of it and amazing events. But there's also this like big push to, I think, make Bitcoin magical again, which to me, that magic is, I think, deeply rooted in culture.
Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2 from Blockspace Media. I'm Charlie Spears. Bitcoin Season 2 is about new faces and new topics on Bitcoin, the degen, and the technical. I have a very interesting conversation with OuterLumen, who is an illusionist at the Taproot Wizards. We will be talking about the work they are doing over there and their latest very interesting product, Spellverse. If you have not been there, you should check it out. But we're going to deep dive on that and just kind of all things Wizards and Web3. But before that, a word from our sponsor. Bitcoin Season 2 is brought to you by Botanix. Botanix Labs is pioneering a new direction for DeFi with the first EVM L2 running on Bitcoin that's built to be forward secure, decentralized, and share gas fees generated by the network with users. See the future of DeFi at Botanix, botanixlabs.xyz. Okay, OuterLumen, welcome to Bitcoin Season 2. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Charlie? Thanks for having me. This is fun. I'm looking forward to this.
So I just get right into it. Where's your username come from? Where do I get OuterLumen?
Oh man, this is such a funny story. I'll keep it short, but it's kind of hilarious. So my partner and I have our own custom projection mapping software. And like so we're like experimental musicians a while back, and we were all like music and visuals, right? Our own visuals, like audio responsive visuals. And various folks would come to some of these shows and they're like, hey, could you do that, but like for my show or for our festival? And so we're like, I guess, okay, but we kind of want to separate like our own process from us being, I guess, VJs in a way. So in 2020, like early 2020, I parked OuterLumen because my partner and I, like, we do like these name exercises where we pick a name. And for me, I feel like the biggest value is if I can get the .com for something. Like even like today, like that means that I'm on like my creative game where I come up with something that's clever and I can still park a .com. So we went in like this journey. And so Lumen, of course, has two meanings. One, like I have some history and some background in public health and stuff. And so like, when you study tissues, like the lumen is the lining of vessels and whatnot in the body. But also, of course, going to the projection stuff, the lumens are, what projection light bulbs are calculated in lumens, that's how, how bright it is. And we would do a lot of like throw calculations depending on the projectors we would rent for visuals and stuff. And I'm like, why don't we call the VJ like name or brand OuterLumen? Let's see if that exists as a .com. And so I parked the Twitter and I parked the .com, like got the socials, whatever. And I'm like, OuterLumen, if we do things for festivals or whatever, we will call it that. But it's like 2020, the pandemic. So, whatever. And then when like Spaces came around in 2021, NFT boom and whatever, like I wanted to participate in it, and I was too lazy to add yet like one more name. I didn't want to use my own name because I have like, a bit of a brand and whatnot with my real identity. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just jump in as OuterLumen into some of these spaces and conversations. I never imagined that I would like become OuterLumen or Lumen or Outer or OL or whatever people call me. So yeah, I became the VJ project as I guess like an identity. And the craziest thing that's ever happened to me in Web3 in terms of like having that moniker is at NFT NYC, one of them, I don't remember which one at this point, but we were standing outside waiting for an Uber, and I pop into a Spaces just to like see what's up for the people that are having FOMO. And behind me, I hear someone say, OuterLumen. And like, I'm not wearing any merch. I'm like, you would not recognize me. And it was the weirdest thing. And it was like just somebody who would listen to me on like a morning Spaces and recognize my voice from me speaking on a street corner. The power, I think, of like, I guess, vocal identity or that kind of, like, it just blew my mind. And it was really cool to meet like a community member IRL. But that was wild.
That is wild. That makes a lot of sense. And it also, your title at the Taproot Wizards, Illusionist, makes a lot of sense now. VJ, visual arts, Illusionist. That's really cool. Did you get to pick the job title, or is this kind of a do you get a big wizard hat and you pull out of the wizard hat and you say you're the illusionist, you're the artificer?
I don't even remember. Like maybe Tyler suggested. I don't remember. Somehow I'm just like, illusionist sounds great. Why not?
So I think it might be good to to just to contextualize the wizards a bit here, because if you're deep in the community, you kind of intuitively know what the Taproot Wizards are. But if you haven't been hanging out on the Discord, as I imagine most of the people listening to this haven't, the average person knows, oh, the Taproot Wizards, they're the people who are pushing that OpCat stuff. And then Udi is always tweeting and like baiting people. But like, I don't think that really like, that does not get you, it does not explain what the Taproot Wizards are.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. What are the Taproot Wizards in your words?
I think to me, like, it just goes back to how I found out about them, because I wasn't in like Taproot Wizards or Ordinals culture either, right? At the inception of the Taproot Wizards. So I think like, I feel like people maybe have these two different, like either you're just not in Web3 or crypto at all. So like, what is any of this versus where I came from, which is like coming from Ethereum side of things and being through all of that. It was interesting to shift to like, oh wait, Bitcoin is now like growing culture on it. Because I think like my partner and I got into Bitcoin in 2013, and we've always perceived Bitcoin as like, this, I guess, digital commodity, if you will. The tech of it was really interesting. A lot of my like friends were mining it at the time. And like, there was just like this tech buzz around it. And then Ethereum happened, and we were kind of like, wait, there's like degeneracy in art and culture and all these things like can happen on Ethereum. And Bitcoin frankly got boring. Right? Like it did, at least for us. Like
you're not wrong. It got very, it got very siloed.
Totally. Like full respect to the tech. Like, yes, HODL, love it. But like, what else do you do besides buy it and sell it? Like, at least in our world, we weren't like part of, some of the like meetings and conferences and those early things. So it was really just like that kind of existence with it and that kind of like co-relationship with it. You hold it, or you sell it or whatever. And sure, there's stories of like, yeah, we sold them and paid off a Visa when it went from like $40 to $420, like as you do if you've done that, But then Ethereum was just kind of crazy. Like all these things started happening and popping off. And I knew that Ordinals happened, but I was working at Yuga Labs at the time, and I was like heads down working on a game release. So I was aware, but I was like, I do not have time right now to like deep dive any of this. And so my first actual, I feel like I'm answering your question as someone who actually was like, what are the Taproot Wizards? Because that happened to me, right? And how I found out about them, I was in a Spaces. A friend of mine, Dancing Eddie, was hosting, and I think Tyler and Randall were in it. And I just popped in because I've known Eddie for a while in the space. And I'm like, who are these nerds? But like, they're cool nerds. That's totally my vibe. And so I the accessibility, I think, was also really fascinating to me in terms of like, I just kind of DM'd Tyler and I was like, what is this? Like, tell me more. And I didn't expect an answer, but he answered and he's like, here's something about Ordinals and here's some resources. And I'm like, great. And so I started looking into it. So the wizards to me were kind of like the way that I learned about Ordinals and really deep dove that. And then if you look at the culture of that, like our community is well aware and very educated on so many things that I think most folks are not. But to me, the Wizards are culture on Bitcoin. Also tech, which is incredible. But my introduction to it was through this like nerdy culture vibe. So yes, there's, collections and art and that side of it and amazing events. But there's also like a big push to, I think, make Bitcoin magical again, which to me, that magic is, I think, deeply rooted in culture.
I would agree. That's my perception too. Like it's people who naturally are technical, but want to reconcile that deep technical interest with the appreciation for art and culture. And I love to see it. So before we get into like the Spellverse, I want to throw one more question to you. Like why, you said you were interested in Web3 and you went full time into it, but like, what draws you into this broader crypto Web3 ecosystem? Why are you interested in it in the first place?
Oh my God, there's so many different reasons. And at first, when NFTs came out, I had a trad art like colleague of mine. Her name is Sarah French. She's actually an incredible artist, a blockchain artist. And so she gave a talk that I organized this panel, and she gave a talk, and it was I think 2019, I want to say, and she mentioned like kitties and punks and that kind of thing. But I was really inspired about her actual use of blockchain for conceptual artwork creation. So she was working with Ethereum, and she made this collection later called like Life Forms, where these tokens self-destruct in 90 days if you don't initiate a transfer function and pass them around. And so initially what attracted me is like the immutable database and how you could use that as an artist. Like there's just so many, aside from like decentralization, self-custody, like all of these things that, people are drawn to, like DeFi, whatever. There was this something to me that was like a new platform, a new medium for creation, if that makes sense. And so like it was definitely tech first, which I think is why this appeal to Ethereum was really interesting. And then, of course, really got sucked into PFP culture as digital identity. Because I think that, and I don't know if, I've talked about this a lot, and I've done some like research on traits and that kind of thing, because I'm absolutely fascinated by a digital identity through PFP culture. Because one thing that kind of like, the punks did with their PFP collection in a way is they gave you like ownership of that identity, versus like your gamer tag back in the days is still your digital identity through some characters. But like, how much are you that person? Like a lot, right? Especially if that's how your, online folks know you and you become friends. And I think like, could you own that? No. If whatever server goes down, that's not yours. So that was also interesting, this like ownership of digital identity. And even though, yes, most projects like, fall and rise, whatever, but out of all of that, there are definitely some that stick, and how much people value that. Like, I want the blue-eyed trade, or I want this thing, or like, yeah, I'm just fascinated by that element of it. So yeah, initially it was the tech, and then this like big draw to like conceptualization around the use of said tech in art, and then huge on like communities. And I think, like, to me, I see there's a kind of like pillars of why people get into Web3. And I think financial gain is, of course, going to be a big slice of this pie. And this is like, this is not like a mutually exclusive diagram. These things overlap for people, right? I think there's tech, there's financial gain and financial opportunity. I think there's community, like you get into it because you're like, oh my God, there's these people talking on spaces. Oh, they're united by this JPEG, whatever it may be, right? So that's a big part of it. I think gaming, some people come through the gaming side. And then there's also careers. Like there's so many Web2 folks that enter that are just like, oh, I'm a marketer and I got hired into this company. I have no idea how any of this works, but I'm here now and I'm going to learn. So yeah, it's some kind of overlap of those, but tech and art are like pretty big ones for me.
You mentioned you're doing a lot of research on traits. I'm kind of curious, could you TLDR an interesting insight into traits, your research on traits that you did?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that I've done for like a while since I got obsessed with it. Through the OpenSea API, I just like scraped like as much trait stuff as I could. And I talk about the methods and, some of the talks I've given about how I had to do that, because I couldn't just like, they give you the last 55,000 records of anything. So I had to get kind of creative in capturing as much as I could. And I specifically focused on like proof of work Ethereum. PFP projects. That was interesting to me. And
That's
also
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of puts a cap on it. The most interesting thing to me that like was a wow moment, maybe more like a project discovery that like, if you're a researcher, which I am, this was kind of like really cool. So after I had all this data and I've been looking at all kinds of traits, and the biggest insight from the trait side is the fact that there is a naming engineer, if you will, a naming creative. I don't know what you even call this person, but someone names traits, right? And if you can imagine how like what I kept seeing is, the trait of having like a see-through body has so many names because people either they are selective and they choose the same thing over and over again from a lot of the times the punks, right? And what they've named. But then they get creative and they choose their own trait names. And so the nomenclature and the language around traits was extremely fascinating to me, not just like the visual representation and manifestation of how these things look. And then the coolest insight was when when proof of stake started, there's like a hard like last block before and after. And I remember cutting off my data and then looking at the last project. And I expected it to be some like rug, whatever, like in my mind, my hypothesis was it's going to be something, who cares, right? But I was curious to see what it was. I was so wrong, Charlie. It's called the Lost Miners of Ether. And they have a white paper on how they pulled off putting this project, like, to be the last proof of work project. They're also nerdy. And I met like the community because I went into there and I'm just like, who are you guys? Like, this is crazy. And I like, why would I ever know of them? They're not a big particular project. Like, no degens are trading these on the timeline or anything. But my data got me to them because they did exactly the thing that something like my data set would actually lead me to. Like, if you want to be the last and I cut off my data set, yeah, you're going to be the last in my data set. So that's probably the coolest thing. It was just like my hypothesis was so wrong on what that project was going to be. And there were people out there that really made sure that they captured that like moment in Ethereum's history.
I mean, that's the way to my heart is to talk proof of work. So you've got me. After this, I'm going to go hunt down these guys and check them out because that's really fascinating. And you mentioned, like they're like the namespace for creating new nomenclature is wide open in Web3. It's like you kind of get, it's like wide blue ocean. You get to come up with names. Casey gets to literally create new words, which are now the Bitcoin pantheon. Ordinals are now synonymous with Bitcoin. And that brings us to Spellverse, because that's a cool name. It's a very cool name. But what is it? I go to the website. It's a really fun, exploratory project. But what is Spellverse?
So I love how at one point you referred to it as the Spellverse, because I think the thing for me that's funny about Spellverse personally is to me, the tagline of it is it's not a metaverse, because every project from 2021 onwards had a roadmap. And on the roadmap was a metaverse. And look, I've been through from voxels, crypto voxels back in some of the earliest metaverses. And love exploring them. There was Somnium and Decentraland and you name it, right? Everyone's metaverse land, whatever. And something that I like about a metaverse, because I don't think we're in a stage right now where we have the internet, right? And we have the internet because there are no competing internets, if you will, that are actually competing internets. When we say the internet, we have one kind of collective understanding what that is. But we don't have the metaverse yet. There is no the metaverse. There's a metaverse. Whose metaverse? Well, so in thinking about this, when I thought about Spellverse, I was excited because to me, Spellverse is a collective existence of every kind of person who's put time and effort into answering our call for quests or missions and participated and showed up and just blew it out of the park with some of the stuff that they've created. And I really thought okay, how can we put something like this together and what does the experience look like for them? And I wanted it to be an exploration because I think there's just so much. And, depending on the quest, depending on the individual person's creativity and how they express themselves, I wanted it to be an exploration. And I'm a gamer kid. And my favorite game of all time is Star Fox 64.
Hell yeah.
like obsessed. That is like hands down. And just the Nintendo 64's experience was the first time that I got this, like, for me as someone who, like, I didn't play a lot on a PC. I didn't have a PC that could play games when I was little, but I was able to get this, like, I stood in line, like I got the 64 when I was a kid. It was like this big deal. And I remember like Mario transitioning to have agency of movement in 3 space. And that idea of movement in 3 space like stuck with me forever, because I think there's just like, it's such an interesting thing to be able to explore like a non-linear path, right? Like a path of pure exploration. And the same thing occurred in Star Fox when you had those modes in planets, right? Where you could just go off course and like fly around. And the agency of freedom is something that, like, if you think about like, what gamers, like why people game and why people go to these experiences at all, it's because they're looking to satisfy something. Maybe it's because they, want to be a leader on a leaderboard. Maybe it's because they want to escape, but they're paying with their time. So they better be getting something in return for the time they invest into a game. And for me, it was exploration and that like freedom. And so when I thought about Spellverse, that was something that I was really interested in. I didn't want like a scroll story. I didn't want like so once we decided that it was going to be something that was going to be 3-dimensional, I was really, really excited to think about how it could be manifested, and really like remembered like Star Fox and like 64 kind of exploration days. And now it's a lot easier to bring something like that into the browser, into mobile. So, but yeah, Spellverse is a collective, like beautiful experience showcasing to everyone, including the community, the effort that they've put into, our actual like community. I think it's very cyclical in that way.
So, okay. So we thought about like trying to like pull up a browser and you to like visually walk through what it looks like. But because there's about half the people are like listening to this, can you explain to me like visually what it looks like, paint a picture so that a listener can understand what you're talking about?
Yeah. So you show up once you get the link, and the very first thing you see is this wizard hat. And that was something that I was very excited about. I kind of just like, what, why not? There's the symbolism in pulling things out of a hat, and the magicians and wizards, and there's like a lot of lore. So to me, I just thought like, let's put all the magic into a hat. And so when you show up, you see this like hat that's, has glowing like stars and spheres and things. And it says, welcome to Spellverse. And then you click on that and there's this like animated effect that just takes you in. It's almost like an expanse, where the hat expands into an expansive experience. And then whether you're on your phone or on the browser, you can, there's a little bit like of a Fatui first time user experience where you get to go through. And shout out to Fermion, my cat, who's like, hey, let me take you through this. And, gives you some keys if you're like brand new to this. And you can explore different stars, and kind of as you go past them, they glow. That means that they're active in an active state that you can engage with. And if you click on one of these stars, you're going to be delighted with a community member submission, whether it's a wizard shower that they took, or went on like, looking for OpCat or playing, Bipland, whatever it is, there's something there captured from, every quest. And so you kind of have a choice. You can move around from star to star. There's definitely some Easter eggs in there. People have found, yeah. So it's a fun experience.
I had not found an Easter egg. I tried to zoom really far out, so I can get like.
You did.
I found one. Okay, sweet. I was, because this is one thing I always do is I'm one of those weird I wouldn't say one of those like bug searchers, but I'm like, okay, where's the actual boundary of the game I'm in? And so. Of course, that's the first thing I try to do is see how far I can get out. And I got pretty far out. But so I found one of the...
Well, you saw the grid then, right? Like if you came all the way out, you would have seen the boundary. Yeah.
Yes.
That was something that... I'm the same as you.
Okay.
I ended up playing Mario 3 at one point, which like I got obsessed with that game. Because I'm the person that will start and go backwards in the level first just to see if I can. Like I think Mario has trained me for like to be a secret hunter. So, and I'm also like a maximalist, and like I want like a completionist, if you will, of like the level, right? Like I want the medal, I want the thing, I want to do all of it. And so in thinking about how to manifest Spellverse into like existence, I wanted to account for like the person who I also identify as that would go right to the top of something or right to the extremes and push it to those extremes. So yeah, definitely one of the things that if you do in fact travel all the way out, it's not like nothing happens. There's definitely some fun stuff for you to see there.
So I want to go back to like your thought process behind like how you showcase the community's work, because, if people aren't aware, you guys have been doing these quests towards like community education and like advocacy towards like community goals. And there's so much now history in a single, 2 years now worth of like community produced content. And I've been wondering like how you guys are ever going to keep track of this. Talk me through kind of like why you decided to do it this way and maybe like how you think about it going forwards.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to present kind of like an artwork, if that makes sense. Like the idea isn't necessarily that it's like some kind of a game or something that you have to like. It's more of like a capture like of something that has transpired. And so if you want to go and refer to it because you participated, you can go find yourself. You could share the link of your own star and be like, look, this is my submission. I'm a part of this. And for us, it's like, look at our amazing community and all the things that they have contributed. So in choosing like that kind of format, there's a ton of amazing submissions, and it was, like really important that we captured some of the craziest things too. I remember how shocked I was when I saw the 2 people that like drove a convertible through like a car wash for their wizard shower. That kind of stuff is just, it's so extra, So a big part of that was like, how do we create like a platform and a space where all of these things can be captured in a way that's, that's meaningful, is reflective of the magic of Taproot Wizards, and, give something back. And so we thought, okay, well, if we put this like expansive thing, we may or may not do more, we may or may not add more, but the point is that we can, there's definitely more room in Spellverse for more community things. So I'm not revealing whether or not we're going to go that route, but it was definitely created with the ability in mind, if that makes sense, that the hat can take on more things. So, we'll see. And I think like it's something that people can definitely visit. And I've visited, like when I'm looking for something, or I'm like, oh, I want to make a reference to this, or I want to check out, a bunch of things in Mission 2, or, one of the cool ones, and I think one of the challenges was that the diversity of submission formats, right? Like if you look at Mission 1, which is Bitcoin Struggle, that's kind of a narrative thing, right? like a lot of people just wrote stuff for that one. And so it's like, okay, well, how do you put that with something that's very video based, or so also creating an environment where you can showcase the variety of formats, and kind of like that was a bit of a challenge. So creating this kind of like modal idea where you get this zoom view of a star and still ultimately connects you to, X if you wanted to look at the very original thing, you're able to do that. Plus, if you love something and then you can go back to X, you can then interact with it. And we've had that for sure. Like, people have posted like, oh, I forgot I did that, but suddenly it's getting like a few likes, because it's getting that like reinvigoration, if you will, of past efforts. Because you mentioned, it's been a couple of years of stuff. So I think it gives it like that was another thing, right? Like is people have done these things and maybe they've forgotten that they have, but we didn't forget that they have done them. So releasing something like this, like the really main core thing is like, hey, we see you, like we recognize what you guys have been doing.
So, do you have like any particular like submissions or stars that jump out to you? What have been some of your personal favorite or more interesting like submissions to quests over the past couple of years?
Yeah. So, definitely like the convertible wizard shower thing was pretty epic. There's things that pop out that probably are like, maybe they're not as, convertible through a car wash. But what stood out to me is the actual like global nature of our community. Like as you look through these, what fascinated me the most is being like, wow, this person is in Brazil going into McDonald's, and this person's in Australia going into this lake. That like there's a lens that is maybe not that you see the world through. Like you kind of get to see it through the community's background, if that makes sense. There's somebody in Africa going around in a village looking for Opcat with their little printed sheet. Like it's just so boots on the ground, whether you're in somebody's living room or you're in somebody's river following them into the lake because they're going to have their shower in, the ocean or wherever they are. I think like collectively, when I think about looking through submissions and getting to know the community through their submissions, like recognizing and really visually having sink in that it is global and it's big and it's vast, and you get to experience that. Like you get to travel with folks that do that, whether it's a McDonald's in Asia or, a bathtub in Europe. Like I thought that, especially coming from pandemic where we were kind of inside, and there were projects that came out that really highlighted that. Like, I don't know if you remember, there was one where it was just random people's window views, and you can randomly hit a random button, and there was a live cam of people showing what outside looked like in their city. And it was such a cool art project because we couldn't go outside. So you just got to like see random people, stranger stuff. And I think about those kind of things where I experience something like Spellverse because yes, there is the like, all of the amazing stuff. Like, some of the singing ones are just so incredible. Like there's just so much talent. So that and the underpinning layer of this, like, this global community that is giving us like a window into their lives through these like, minutes or seconds that they, the time that they took to share.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about Web3 and this new internet era we're in. And we have a PFP culture, but that it does often seem to lack the real human component, like the getting to see the window, people at where they are in the world. The internet does kind of flatten the communication landscape, but we are humans in different places in life and around the world, and that's a really interesting dimension to bring to it. I'll switch gears a bit. So one of my fun questions for all the wizards who I ask is like, okay, what does a Taproot Wizards brainstorming session look like? How do you guys come up with your zany ideas, your quest ideas? What if I were to show up to like a stand up? Does everybody show up with a wizard hat on like they do in on stage, or like how does the sausage get made over there at the Taproot Wizards? I
mean, we wear wizard hats all the time. I'm wearing one now. I'm just wearing the invisible version for this podcast. It's there. It's on. I mean, look, I think this is almost like a general question of creativity. Like some of the ideas, like I don't know if you watch Mad Men. It's one of my favorite series.
I'm familiar enough, yeah.
Yeah, like, so there's, like, I call these, like, Don Draper moments, where Don Draper, who's the main character of Mad Men, is doing absolutely nothing related to what's actually happening, because that's how creative works. And then you're like, oh, right, this is the thing. Like, even to be more specific, like, when I thought that it's a hat, I was not in a stand-up, I was not at my desk. I don't even remember what I was doing. I think I was walking, or like there's a thing for shower thoughts and that kind of thing. So like I'm not answering your question directly in like the logistics of what we do, but I just really want to point out that I think like if anyone is lacking creativity, the best thing to do is not to like full on, like head on chase it. You gotta let that breathe, I think, and get inspired, and then it hits you. You're like, right, of course this is what it is. So I think there's like an ebb and flow. And I mean, you're into music. I think you also get that, like, if you're chasing something, it's likely the hardest time for you to actually attain it versus letting it air out and having it come to you. And I think it's hard, but yeah, it's
very hard. Yeah, it's very difficult to force creativity. It's very hard to like manufacture it. You kind of have to let it happen and grab it when it happens. I can relate.
And I think look, I work with some incredible people. I'm so lucky to work with them. Like it's not just my team. They become my friends. Like this is, it's really amazing. So like to show up and do amazing things with brilliant minds that, there's no shortage of creativity that comes in whenever it does. And everyone has their own different methods. But yeah, for me, you definitely have to it comes at the time when I least expect it, and then I just hold on. Like I had an idea that had nothing to do with anything that I was doing, where I was watching like rock climbing in the Olympics, because I rock climb and I have since I was a teenager, and I can't believe this is now an Olympic sport. And out of nowhere it was like, oh my God, this thing is totally a cool thing, completely unrelated. But is it? Like, I don't know. This is where I'm kind of like, okay, in the psychology side of things, like maybe some things are related. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the rock climbing Olympics. My wife is into rock climbing, and I remember that week or two we had rock climbing on the TV all the time because it was in the Olympics and it was like the big event that week. So, so you've been in. So now you've kind of. It's like it's a common story, I think, now post Ordinals, which is a lot of people who got their start in Bitcoin went off and ventured around the big wide world of crypto and Web3 and are now kind of back in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And your story seems to also mirror this. What are your reflections on just why do you think, I mean, I feel this is a bit rhetorical, but what are your reflections on Bitcoin now from where we were maybe a decade ago? And why do you think it's not just Casey who created or who kicked this off? Like this happened across multiple dimensions at the same time. Why do you think this is happening? And what are your reflections on the current state of Bitcoin culture and why it seems to be bringing people back?
I mean, I'm just excited. Like I didn't anticipate it. I think but it makes so much sense. In thinking about it, like, of course, Bitcoin. Like, if Bitcoin can have all these things, then I'm so here for it. It's like, daddy chain, mommy chain, whatever people call it. Like, it's amazing to have something that's like that OG to suddenly have this like cultural art kind of movement associated with it. Like, I think that's just brilliant. I am aware that some people really don't like this. I get it. I don't. This is Bitcoin season too. We don't concern ourselves too much. We don't dwell on that negative mindset too much. I think what was interesting to me in coming to Bitcoin, like hard from ETH, was remembering that those people exist. Like I think it matters, and like I'm not even dwelling because I don't care. I just didn't even realize. I'm like, wait, really? Like that was kind of because I think. Maybe I swallowed the Ethereum pill too many times to just be like, yeah, of course. And also for me, so I'm an and person, right? Like and I tend not to be an or person. Like it's not Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever it is. Mostly it's like, wait, why not? Like I'm curious, and who knows where any of these things go. And what I do if I don't get into it is I deprive myself of the knowledge base if I just am shut off, right? Like I'd rather learn about it and then make like an informed decision on why I'm not into something, but not like just purely on like face value. I'm excited about what's happening on Bitcoin. I'm excited to see how many like other chain people are embracing it. There's a lot. Look, I went to Bitcoin Nashville and I made a hypothesis. I kind of thought, okay, well, this is going to be amazing because I'm going to meet a lot of new people. I'm going to meet Bitcoin people. I did. There was so many Ethereum people there, like so many. And that was like every party, everywhere I went, I was like, oh my God, I know you from Apes. I know you from this. I know you from Pixel Vault. Like, it was kind of amazing to see that there's this like huge cross-pollination where there are people that are like Bitcoin for Bitcoin people. And then there's like this influx of new people that I think are interested because they are collectors or flippers or whatever it is that they are. it provides them this like extra, I hate the word utility, but it gives you something, right? Like when you just hold crypto, you just hold crypto, and your association with that is that you have number go up, number go down, and whatever other value you put on to holding it. When you hold a JPEG on crypto, there's like now conversation. What kind of JPEG? Who else is holding it? Why do you have it? Like there's just so many things that happen when you open that up. And then not to mention people that are creating stuff on there, right? Like whether it's artists or other projects, like, yeah, it's kind of incredible. But it has this like, I think this OG, kind of like the people vibe with punks, you know, like punks are punks. Like they're kind of untouchable at this point. Like the market's going to do what it's going to do. A punk will always be a punk because it's a punk. And Bitcoin is always going to be Bitcoin because it's Bitcoin. So having this like new resurgence of activity on it through a creative lens, I'm just so bullish on it, and I have a very positive outlook on it. I think it's just going to get like even better.
It's funny you mentioned like you saw a lot of ETH people at Bitcoin Nashville, and I also saw a lot of Bitcoin people at ETH Denver. It's like very interesting to see both these phenomenons happening, and maybe I wasn't looking for it previously, but it definitely seems like this was the past year or two. We've seen a much larger cross pollination. Maybe you know, if I know I try not to dwell on the more myopic Bitcoin culture, but I do like to try to speak to, I would say, the archetypical laser eye and try to like, and I don't want to like totally write them off. Like I want to imagine like I'm trying to invite them into this new fun era of Bitcoin. And I'll throw this question to you. Like, what do you think, if you could try to like woo a laser eye into this new, fun, magical ecosystem, what are some resonant like talking points, or what would you say to them to try to maybe change their mind?
Oh man, that is such a hard question, because I feel like to unpack it like psychologically, that it's almost like a taste versus function thing, if that makes sense. Like there are some people who attach like I can never convince you that like a certain ice cream is better than a different ice cream. Like if you like chocolate ice cream and I don't, how can I possibly be like vanilla is better? Do you know what I mean? Versus like, if for some reason there's a loss of function there where it's like, no, that ice cream is bad for your health, or that ice cream has like whatever, maybe we could have a conversation about it. But you understand how like your set of values and morals has to suddenly like undo. And that is like the hardest thing ever. So, I mean, my philosophy really is like, am I going to waste my time? Probably not. When someone's that deep into like having their mind not change, they're protective of having their mind not change, if that makes sense. Like so really you want to, you know, play to the people that maybe are open to having their minds change and having those conversations. I think if those conversations are to be had, I don't think it is about the what. Like it never is about like, oh, well, you're missing out on, you know, function or whatever. If they're not open to it, if they're open a little bit, then maybe you can have that discourse. But if they're fully closed, it's almost like you kind of just, you have to ask them like what is truly like the blocker. And maybe almost like, to me, it goes back to that and or, right? Like, is this coming from because you have a bad experience, or is this coming from, you know, some like thing that you're blindsiding? But I generally like just couldn't be bothered, because I don't know if those people are like, if you're capable of necessarily onboarding them. It's almost like they have to do it themselves because they feel like they're missing out. So really the answer to your question is, if we just rock what we're doing, then if it gets really good, then they have to fundamentally undo their own kind of framework and realize like, wow. And I think like, you know, that kind of has to be what happens, right? Like if you're really like at first, very, very first, I don't think I was into NFTs at the very beginning of the concept. I'm like, this is going to be extractive. And I don't know how much I agree with it. And then things started happening. And like at the time, in that like tiny moment, who could have changed my mind if my mind's already made up on that, right? Like, you know, so, but then you're like, wait, am I making the right call here? Because I'm seeing other evidence and I'm seeing other things that are being like, that are awesome things that did change my mind ultimately, because I saw evidence of things that helped me do that. And so I think if on this side of things we rock what we're doing, the idea is that eventually maybe there's going to be a tipping point where more and more laser eyes are like, okay, wait, but like I can't ignore this anymore. And, but some people are just going to be, like they're going to preserve their system no matter what, because that's what the actual goal is. Maybe too psychological of a tangent, but like, I
don't think so. It really is a human problem. It's the same. It's kind of funny because I think I see similar narrative and communication challenges talking about Bitcoin with or even crypto with people who don't want to have anything to do with it. It's like they have to decide that they're interested in it, and then we can have like productive conversations about the particular details of like why
Absolutely.
I think so. Yeah.
If they're closed, they're closed. And I've had that with AI, and like, it's funny, I recently remembered something, and, I'll share it here because I think this is exactly like this is kind of almost like a lesson in a way in being close to something, I used to host these spaces that are like science art kind of merger spaces. And first they were in Clubhouse, and then we moved to Twitter or X or whatever when it happened. And my co-host was severely like anti-crypto, anti-NFTs, anti-AI, anti-any of that stuff, right? And which I thought was interesting, but he's very like, no, preserve the pencil, like we're going to draw things. I have a BFA, like I'm deeply rooted in like those processes as a creative. I don't want, that kind of stuff. And there was another artist at that time that is like actually like a full on like real life, like illustrator, like full on, drawing like for all kinds of magazines, whatever. And so my partner and I would chat, hang out, and we, at the time as things were happening, we're like, yeah, we're into NFTs. This is really cool. And we tell them both that they're ENS domains, and they're kind of like websites, but it's like a .com or whatever, but it's on Ethereum, and maybe, just maybe, you might want to secure your artist name. Because why not? Like you have a brand, whatever, so, and one of them, like in our DMs, was like, yeah, please, this is really cool. I would love to park that. That's such an interesting thing to me. I don't know anything about it, but I'm open to it, And the other one was like, no, this is terrible. Why would I ever, blah, 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 whatever. No problem. Then ENS drops a token. And suddenly one of these artists has 17,000, whatever it was, 20 grand. I'm in Canada. It was like more. And the other one doesn't. And like, and this is purely not even from anything we talked about, like in terms of what inspires at least me in the tech. This is just money. But it was such a like example of how you just miss those opportunities just because you're not curious enough, because you have something there. Like this isn't even like that you maybe needed the money or whatever. Like, yes, anyone could use a bit of money, but it's the fact that like all you had to do was be open. And then you would have had this. It doesn't happen every time. This is not a playbook, but the idea of missed opportunity like that. And the other artist came to us and he's like, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, this is going to be a trip for us and other stuff for my family. And this is really interesting. And he asked, he's like, is this the norm? And I'm like, no, this is not the norm. This is not something that happens daily. Like this is, but because you're curious enough, you get a bit of a reward for being open. And the reason why I'm saying this story is like, I don't want somebody to suddenly like sign up for every list or get every single thing because they might get an airdrop. But it's like, stay open, man. Like this is not, it just takes a little bit of onboarding. It wasn't hard for us to spend 10 minutes with that artist to just onboard them and tell them what's going on. And then, they were in. And you know what? They didn't do anything on chain. They never made NFTs beyond that instance. Like I still chat with them. They're not interested. But they're not closed. And that's, I think, like the thesis here, like just don't be that closed.
So, yeah. So we'll wrap this up and I'll say, let's take a look at the broader Ordinals ecosystem. And I'll ask you, outside of Taproot Wizards and Quantum Cats, which are obviously our favorite collections and projects, what's interesting happening in Ordinals right now? What are some of your maybe favorite like pet projects or interesting creative things you see happening in the Ordinals ecosystem?
I mean, I think there's a lot of really cool things going on. Like, I mean, obviously there's like the big projects or whatever and communities around those. And I like seeing some of the community engagement and stuff that they're doing to rally their communities and their parties and all that stuff. I'll tell you what I've been hunting for though, because this is where I am. I love collecting things. I love collecting like weird things on Ethereum. And I'm somebody who's not versed enough in ordinals from like knowing what some of the cooler things are. So I've been finding like, I found this art drop that someone shared with me where there was like a bunch of artists way back that, put like some artworks on, and I've discovered some, and I've, picked up a couple of those. Like, I'm interested in like the weird, obscure things. And there's a lot of that but there's no gallery or curation or anywhere to go and find that. So if you're new, it's really hard. And actually, I'm realizing it's the same thing if you're coming on ETH. Like, how do you know what to get that like isn't necessarily a rug, but has some kind of interesting value or art or something, or is some kind of like a project that kind of like the Lost Miners we talked about, like who is the like ultimate onboarder into some of those moments? Because what you see on the timeline is the most popular, most focal communities. And sometimes like I think people are priced out of those too, right? Like, so how do you get onboarded? And currently I would say like that's something that's missing. And I'm lucky that I have colleagues and friends that have been around that I could be like, hey, if I found this cool thing, is this something that was dropped, with some kind of, like with not a collectible kind of intent in mind or whatever, but I don't have that information. So what I'm after and what I'm into now is really getting myself an education on some of those creatives that have done things, whether it's an art drop or like an interesting PFP because it's on some kind of like SAT, whatever it is. Like, I'm curious in getting like a really good like curatorial education into those projects, because being in ETH, I have that already, and I'm missing that on Ordinals in like, I want more knowledge in that space, because what I do is when I introduce people, I send them things. I send them a crypto kitty, usually like something funny and stupid and cheap and hilarious and likely the oldest NFT in their ETH wallet, right? Like greeting card stuff. And I'm looking for like that in Bitcoin ordinal culture. Like where are the greeting card onboarding kind of things that you could send to someone and have them own and have that like first ownership, because that's where it starts. Like, I do a lot of that kind of onboarding where it's like, no, make a wallet. Here's how I'm going to send you something. And now you have it and it's yours, and people can right click save it, but you still have it because it's fun. And so that's Charlie where I'm at. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to onboard some of those same people and new people into the Ordinals ecosystem, and I tell them to go get, a wallet, what am I sending them that is like, it's fun, it's for the culture? Yeah. So that's what I'm looking for. And I've been on the hunt, and I have some projects already, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's also, I found that's actually one of the ways I'm able to convince some of my more staunch legacy Bitcoin friends is to send them cool stuff, which is not like tied up in a markets or price speculation driven thing, which is great. That powers the market and the ecosystem, but like that doesn't scratch that intellectual curiosity itch, which is, I think, the real reason why we both have stayed in this for so long. So, OuterLumen, thank you so much for coming on Bitcoin Season 2. Where can people find you? Where do people go to do more Spellverse and Taproot Wizards stuff?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Follow Taproot Wizards and Quantum Cat's accounts, and you can go on the website and find Spellverse there. And then I'm at OuterLumen, always have been. Find me there.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in 2025.
Thanks so much, Charlie.